Welcome to the Black Sheep Show. I am the creator and host, Amanda. Right now we're going to delve into the topic of police reform and prison abolition and defunding the police, but just based on the climate that we're in right now of social agitation and civil unrest. A lot of the protests, well, all of the protests that are going on nationwide and worldwide are in response to police brutality. And I just wanted to get you guys' take. Can the police system in America and the prison system be reformed? Is it fixable?
No.
I don't think that it's fixable. I don't think that it's fixable. I do think that we can take a different approach about how we collectively rehabilitate individuals. We are all human. We are all, by abstract nature, bound to make mistakes. And with the human creating laws that we have, we're always bound to make mistakes, period. Do I think that reform will take place? Yes. Do I feel like it needs to be eradicated altogether? Yes, because the originality of policing in general came from a very oppressive state. It was always for police officers, their original concept was for them to be able to oversee and make sure that they were continuing to hold slaves accountable to their master. And so I don't see how we continuously have that oppressive system today in a lot of respects. When our main focus is, at least in the last 5 or 10 years now, has been around rehabilitation over punishment.
So you feel okay, before I get to asking you what you feel can be done to reform the police system as well as the prisons, Luc, you outright said no, that it can be reformed. Let's go ahead and jump right into you.
Reform is just something they use to, like, you know, it's just another tool to keep people subdued. Like, it's just, you know, it gives, like you were talking about painting the street, like, that's bullshit. It's just performative shit. This is just like a policy version of performative bullshit where they just write obvious shit that the cops should have already been adhering to, like rules that most police stations already have implemented, and the cops just break the rules as if it's already, like, it's already illegal to murder people, but the cops still find ways to
navigate
through the laws. And it's not like they're not breaking the rules that they already have now, so it's not like, it doesn't make sense to just propose new rules and on top of that give them more funding to, you know, break those rules. It's just like, it's a waste of time. Like, it just keeps us in a stupid ass cycle of like, alright, this is what we're gonna do. It's like a manipulative, it's like a fucking toxic relationship, and the dude is just like, alright baby, I'm gonna put my fucking location on, you can see where I'm at. Like, dude, like, you shouldn't have been doing none of this shit, so this shit needs to be a wrap. It doesn't need to be, okay, this concession or whatever the fuck. Like, that shit needs to get the fuck out of here. It doesn't mean that cops need to be fucking thrown into the sun, which I wish they would be, but I'm sure there needs to be a structured process for getting rid of them so it doesn't create, you know, too much chaos, I guess. But I'm down for, like, you know, a structured path for defunding the police and ultimately abolishing them.
Absolutely.
And it's going to require it's going to require a lot of creativity on the part of us to come up with different solutions for helping people with different problems that are out there. And obviously, like, with capitalism, this shit is the source of all the problems that police and prisons are supposedly here to fix, and they're not really fixing anything. People go in there and they're just subject to all types of wildness and come out not rehabilitated at all. They come out more likely to go back, and it's just something they use to profit off of people with pain. They're not really doing anything to get to the root of the issues. If they did, then it wouldn't be necessary to have cause for punishment.
I agree. It's structured in the law as we see currently that there is a quota that has to be met for every prison to stay in existence. Like, those are laws that are written on the books, and they shouldn't. I agree that they shouldn't be there. Just from the basis of community-based alternatives, like keeping somebody in their same community and actually doing the process of rehabilitation. Instead of just shipping them out to a county jail and saying, okay, well, let's lock them up and throw away the key. It's giving them that restorative process to say, hey, what can I fix in either the systemic aspect of it or in your home life that has driven you to this point, and addressing it from the root of the problem instead of just blaming it on the person and saying, okay, well, they can't be fixed. Let's just throw them in there and lock away the key.
So you mentioned that reform, you believe that reform is possible. Is that what reform looks like to you? What does reform look like to you?
To me, I think reform looks like a restorative justice process. It allows somebody to have the human redemption and to still be held accountable to the things that they've done. And it allows for not for police to step in and do that, but for community to step in and do that. To be a part of that work, to be a part of that process, because at the end of the day, when we ship these guys back to their communities, they're going back to the same shit. They're going back to the same things that people expect for them to do. If the community is a part of the healing process, then someone can actually be truly healed, I think. And I especially say that for black communities, because me shipping my dad off the county, like that's not going to benefit him in any way. When he comes back, he's not going to be a better dad to me because of it. He's not going to be a better person because of it. But I know if he was in community with me and got held accountable to his shit, and we worked through the process of rehabilitating him and actually doing that, and forcing him to talk about that process and forcing him to go through that rehabilitation process, then it comes out so much better than leaving it to the alternative, which is sending him back to the same communities with no money, going back to the same environment, and having the chance to be reincarcerated again.
I agree with your sentiments, but I'm kind of confused. I almost feel like what you're describing is abolition. I don't really feel like so that's why I don't feel like you're saying it's reform. I don't really feel like that's a reformation.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like what you're more leaning towards is the abolition. So I think you lean towards no, it can't be reformed, rather than yes, it can be reformed. Because what reform would be. Because what you're talking about is restorative justice and community policing, not even community policing, something with
community accountability.
Community accountability, that's removal of the police
altogether.
Right. So,
I say, and I also say reformation for the sake of like Luc said in the beginning of this portion, it's not going to all happen in one giant step.
Right.
Like it's not, we're going to have to take multiple incremental, which I hate, incremental steps to get to the point where we no longer have, defunding of the police. But it's because we want to prevent chaos. We want to prevent people who are used to the institution to be able to adjust.
To that sentiment, I don't really feel like the police prevent chaos.
I don't think they do either, to be honest.
Like
I think they cause it more than anything.
They incite it, and when chaos does manifest itself, they don't really do much to subdue it, unless it's like applying a violent force.
Right.
So like if my car gets breaking into, 9 times out of 10 they're not gonna find out who did it.
Right.
Now if I have insurance on my shit, 9 times out of 10 they're not helping me recover anything that was lost, or if as a woman, if I call the police, if my boyfriend's beating me up, outside of the 10, or if I was sexually assaulted, like what is the police really doing to protect me or go after someone who's harmed me? So I don't really feel like.
Right.
So when we, and I think that's also in this conversation that comes up when we talk about defunding the police or abolishing the entire system, people come out with, well, who's going to protect us, or who's going to, and it's like, well, who's protecting us now?
Right. In the organizations that I work with and the people that I'm in community with, there's a beautiful saying of who keeps us safe, we keep us safe.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that just, for me, that mindset is what plays more prevalent in the process of, okay, who's going to make sure that we're okay? Who's going to make sure that when your car gets broken into, that, we can come together communally and make sure that you get your stuff back, or that we can buy something or crowdfund for you to be able to get something back for yourself. If your boyfriend's beating you up, to have 6 community members come into the home and say, yo, you can't do that shit no more, you gotta go. Like, to be able to actually protect you and hold that person accountable to what they're doing. And it's people that you know, so it's more comforting that way, I feel like, in a lot of respects too. And black communities, that is a fairly difficult one, I feel like, because we don't like to get in each other's business.
Right.
But I feel like that's something that sometimes we have to let go for the greater good.
I feel like I also feel like that's a tool of white supremacy.
Absolutely.
To encourage us to be individualistic.
Oh, absolutely.
When in reality, we are a communal people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It takes a village. That's an African or indigenous type of thing. That's not really something that white people do. White supremacy preaches. So, with us being like, oh, I stay out of my own business, I just feel like we have to kind of get out of that mindset in general. And also, I wanted to touch on something else that you said with the restorative justice process, the rehabilitation, and the community accountability. And I feel like once we trample the system of the police state, everything else is gonna crumble with it.
Absolutely.
And it has to, in order for this movement of defunding to ultimate abolition, it has to. So if we get rid of the police, that means we have to get rid of the environments of socioeconomic disadvantages.
Absolutely.
So we have to provide those opportunities and those resources to these communities so that they are self-sufficient, so that they are not out committing petty crimes to sustain their lives or provide for their families, or just because they have no other options.
I don't think that we should continue to raise police budgets at all, by any means. I've done many budget sessions where I'm like, there is no reason for us to continue to give money to these organizations. Put money into the communities that are directly affected by all of these negative aspects, and I guarantee you, if you put the money in the right hands, and you will see a difference in that community immediately.
Right. So we're not black people or poor people. And sometimes people view that as a synonymous thing, but black people or people that are economically disadvantaged, they're not inherently violent.
Right.
They're not inherently criminals.
No.
So
not at all.
a lot of things are products of our environment.
Okay, but if you're putting that money into, say, education, or you're putting that money into those community resources, then we shouldn't have that much of a problem. If you can spend $250,000 a year on locking up one child and keeping them in a cage for a fucking year, you can figure out a way to stop paying $14,000 for each child's education.
I'm not a prison abolitionist expert or scholar by any means, so I'm not, like I said, I'm not like an expert in it, but I do wish, and I do hope, and I do want to see a better, I know there's got to be a better way.
There is.
There has to be a better way that police handle us, the system of prisons and jails in general. Because as you said, ultimately, police became created, as you mentioned earlier, to protect property. And at that time, property was slaves. And in northern states, they were created to bust up labor unions.
Yep.
Where slavery didn't exist. So the police, at their root, they're not meant to protect the population. They're meant to protect property and the interest of the ruling class.
Absolutely.
So ultimately, getting rid of them, there has to be some sort of mediating factor or some mediating medium force that can handle crime in a better way, because and statistically, most people in prison or in jail aren't knocked up. They're non-violent offenders.
Exactly. Right.
Drugs and.
I think a lot of what that is going to take though is like reevaluating what are crimes, what are crimes, and what it means to be a criminal in American society.
Exactly.
I feel like that is a major part of the problem. You can be a criminal for jaywalking, a child can be a criminal for skipping school, a parent can be a criminal for making sure their child is not getting to school.
Right.
So you are doing so many other things, but actually facing the problem head on.
Right.
Why is it that a parent has to go to work at 6 o'clock in the morning so they can't ensure that their child is not on the school bus at 7 o'clock? How can we make a better way for that child to be able to get an education while making sure that that parent is either able to go to work or able to get a job where she's able to take care of her child in a substantial way?
Right.
And so I think what happens is when the biggest part of the American justice system is to criminalize every little thing that they can, again, to keep prisons filled, to keep people making money.
There's a literal quota.
Exactly. So if we keep allowing every single little thing to be criminalized, and so then therefore these people are criminals and we can treat them however we want, and we can do them however we want, and we never have to help them. We could just keep them over here, and we never have to actually pay attention to what we're going through. We can keep making money off them over here.
Right.
We can keep putting money towards the things that will keep them in their underclass, and we don't really have to, again, address it. So I think that a big part of why even now, and I mean, prison abolition is something I've come around to like very recently because, you know, I was very much going like, okay, well, niggas still gotta go to jail. But when you look at it as niggas are the only one going to jail, and niggas are the only ones being criminalized and stuff, then you have to really,
there's a standard.
you have to take a step back and say, okay, well, wait a second, you know, and especially when you look at it as like, I think about a lot of the role that like, a lot of black women play in the community, especially with us really not even wanting to call the police in a lot of situations.
Absolutely.
Especially as it pertains to like black men. And I don't think that it should ever, the fact that we are living in a state where it's like, it's either my life or his life. You know, if I do call the police, what happens to him in that situation? If he dies, am I now to blame? And should I just die? Like, should I just let the nigga kill me, or should I just let whatever happened to me happen? Shit, if the police come, will they not think anything? Well, I'll be the motherfucker that gets shot. Like, the fact that we have to make life or death decisions in regards to like those type of situations, there's something fundamentally wrong with the system of policing.
Absolutely.
And so it's like, if I am more afraid to call the police than I am to fight back for myself, that has to go.
Right.
You know, if I can be classified as, you have to look at, I think about Marissa Alexander, that was northern Florida, not South Florida, but, you know, shot her gun because her husband was literally kicking her fucking ass or trying to kick her ass. She goes to jail.
Right.
So who is deciding who is a criminal?
Right.
And why are you a criminal? You know, and I think that that is really what we have to kind of, what we have to work for as far as, again, prison abolition and defunding the police is looking at the American justice system as a whole and as an entire, in its entirety, of we have to really reevaluate the way that laws are taken in general, or the way that laws are written and who they are written for and against.
There you go. And I touch on that only to say, like, who create not just the fact that the system exists, who created the system? Who created most of these petty laws that we have currently? Who created most of these streamlined aspects of being able to control the populace the way that it does? White people. Point blank period.
I honestly, I feel like prison abolition has to happen. I don't know how it will happen, but I feel like it has to happen because I ultimately view the police state and prison in itself as a reformation of slavery.
It's a reincarnation of
it is. Everything has been, if we look at, especially like the last couple of years, even, so one of my favorite documentaries is the OJ 30 for 30 documentary, and I'll talk about it all the time because it not only evaluates OJ's case against Breona in and of itself, but it goes into policing in LA, policing in America. Like, it talks a lot about the police and the criminal justice system. And Mark Furman, who worked for the LAPD at the time, made the comment that Rodney King, it got to beating because they had outlawed chokeholds. But then you turn around in 2015 or whenever Eric Garner died, and police in New York killed him with a chokehold. So now they are outlawing kneeling, you know, because George Floyd was killed, but what was kneeling a fucking reform of? And what is going to be the reform of fucking kneeling? So I think that we can go back and forth all day about reforming this and changing this and that, whatever, but the fundamental problem is the police. Like, that is the absolute issue. And so my thing is, if reform has not worked, because one of the main things with this latest campaign, one of the last things with this campaign, the one that came out a couple of weeks ago, 8 Can Wait or whatever it was, it showed like a decrease in the amount of people that died from the police. The problem is nobody should be fucking dying from the police. I don't want 72% of less people dying from the fucking police. I want nobody to die at the hands of the police, especially because the things that, if we look at the American justice system as it is written now and as it is now, the crimes in which these people would be charged with in a court of law and judged by or convicted by a jury of their peers, most of them, if not all, are still not punishable by death. So the fact that they are having these interactions with the police and they are dying, that literally is a complete contradiction. And we know that America is written on contradictions. The fact that the people that founded the country fought for freedom while at the same time holding people as slaves. Like this, America is built as we know it on contradictions, and it is time, far beyond time, for us to like dismantle it again from, as you said, from the root. Like we cannot continue to, especially again as Black people, because the system was not built for us.
Never has, never will be.
It was not built with women in mind at all. You know, like there was nothing at the beginning of this country and at the founding of this country by whites, not by anybody else. I know you're gonna get me. By the founding of this country from white people was not written with anyone but straight white men in mind.
Right.
So there's no way for us as a society or any way that we can thrive in this system the way that it is currently.
Right.
You know, we like to think that, oh, things have changed because we're not in chains.
No, I mean,
but
it hasn't changed.
We had to fight to get out of chains, and we had to fight to stay out of chains, and we had to fight to, again, against Reconstruction and against Jim Crow. Like Black people have always had to fight and had to come back. Yes, exactly. Like every single thing that has kind of been thrown at us by this country, we have had to fight against. And I think that this, I don't want to say this is the last stop in the fight, but this is definitely, I think, where it needs to come to.
This is a transformative.
Yes, this is definitely where it needs to come to a head, because we are still dealing with a tenet of slavery.
Police are here to protect property and protect capitalists. So if we're gonna dismantle capitalism, we gotta get rid of the fucking yard dog. Police and kill. We gotta get these niggas out of here. We gotta get all this shit out of here. Like we gotta get the physical embodiments of capitalism out of here. We gotta get all the shit that's in our head from white supremacy, all the different spectrums.
Absolutely.
They condition us to think like. This is the revelation point of all these things that have been holding us back.
For me, at least in my city, when you add other people to be the accountability factor to the police, they have a lot of problems with that. Just with like,
because it's not just the police, it's the police unions.
Absolutely.
It is the police unions that are then feeding into the pockets again of different politicians or community leaders that are saying like, you need to also then protect our interests.
Even in the sake of just like training, like there are so many situations where these guys are put in, they are put in harm's way, right? But that's what they signed up for, isn't it? One, and then two, the other big part of that, there are parts of people that police will never and can never understand because it's not a part of their makeup. Like people's mental instabilities, people going through mental health crisis, people dealing with, relapse, whatever the case may be. There are so many other factors that play into that police just should not be involved in.
Absolutely.
Like at all. Like I mean, and so for me, like that's a big part of where I say like that reform step takes place, where it's like, okay, well, you guys can't just be the only ones showing up on scene and handling some shit like that.
Right.
Can you bring in a mental health professional and say, yo, this is what they're going through, this is what they're dealing with, and get an actual play-by-play of what this person's dealing with?
And I think that when we talk about, because I think that's probably a lot of people like main concerns, and even again, I had this conversation with my mom who works for the police about like defunding, and so what happens to what happens then after you have taken away the money from the police and the power from the police, and it's like the same thing really that probably is happening now for a little bit maybe, right? So maybe there is a little bit of us trying to figure out, okay, so how do we control what is now going on or whatever, but that is going to lead to us again tackling this system of people feeling like they have to steal, or feeling like they have to sell drugs, or feeling like they have to murder or whatever. You have to put people on a level playing field.
Absolutely.
And so the fact that we have people in, again, these completely desperate situations, and it is literally a system. We put you in a desperate situation. You react how you do because of the desperate situation. We ship you off to wherever the fuck. You come back to the same separate district if you get out at all.
Right.
And so it's like once we take away these billion-dollar budgets or whatever from the police department, we are now able to give people the resources that, because even the notion, and again, still super, super new to like prison abolition and things like that, but even the notion of, you did this to me, I want you to go to jail, it's vindictive. And it's built in vindictiveness. Whereas
it comes from a place of hate.
it comes from a place of hate, you know, and it's like it's understandable when things happen, but there needs to be work and therapy done so I can get over the trauma that you caused to me,
Exactly.
and you can get over causing that trauma to others.
Like thousands and millions of dollars of taxpayer dollars that we put forward every single one of our paychecks or through the taxes that we pay every day can actually be utilized for something else, like paving damn roads, making sure that we don't have to pay higher property taxes, making sure that we regulate what we spend on our food. Like there's so many different ways. It could go towards piloting a UBI program for the city, whatever the case may be. Exactly. How is that we benefit more so than anything else when we took that money away? We took the $25 million that they wanted to take 2 new youth prisons to build them, and we put that money in towards education and raise teacher salaries by 5%. So there's those little things like that matter so much.
You guys had
more.
to do that. You guys had to do that because why? Teachers strike in Virginia.
They did. They absolutely did. We didn't have a choice in the matter.
Right.
But what better way to utilize that as a catalyst? So yeah, do the work. I'm glad they did the work on the ground because it gave us the wherewithal to say, you know what? We got this money now. Let's put it towards something that actually matters.
Right.
And it's so wild because you hear all the excuses that they can make. They do all, and it's like, you got stocks in this. You got beneficiaries from this that have long histories of beneficiaries from this, including your family, your grandchildren, your children. And it's not benefiting anybody's life. How many people's lives have been actually rehabilitated from going to prison? I can't think of very many. I mean,
That's it.
you know what I mean? Like that's about it. And everybody else kind of gets lost in the cracks. So for me, it's like if we're gonna do that, if we're gonna actually do this thing and like put those resources, put them where they belong.
Right. I think another aspect of defunding them is they just have too much damn money. It's no reason why a local police force has military-grade weapons and all this military technology and special bombs and sensors and to do what?
To
Especially when
stand
they're
up to
using it-
citizens?
When they're using it, exactly. You're using it on the very communities that you are supposed
That's
to.
funding it.
The people that are funding it, and also the people that you are supposed to be serving and protecting.
Right.
We are neither served nor protected. I live in Overtown, which historically has been one of the worst neighborhoods in Miami. It was a very thriving black community when we started. It has since become like a very kind of low impoverished community. It's being gentrified now, whatever. I was walking my dog on the street. A man decided to open his car door as I'm walking by and masturbate in his car. I, of course, called the police because that is my first fucking reaction because there's a maniac on the street. A police car drove past me. It's like, okay, cool. I'm on the phone with the police. Ask me if the police ever showed up, if they ever followed up, if they ever got a call. My mom walked upstairs to the apartment. They basically were like, well, yeah, it's over there, but nothing happened.
Right.
So did I have to die? Like, was that what would have, like, I would not have even been able to call anybody because I was, like, dead on the street.
And what system, how do we function in the system where we want to be reactive?
Right.
Proactive.
Exactly. Like, at what point do you take all of the money and all of the training and all that you have and actually respond to things necessarily in the way that you are supposed to?
That brings up another, like we've been mentioning, contradiction. So I'm obviously optimistic about prison abolition, and I am, leaning towards that as that being my stance. But what I'm having a conflict with is, well, not really a conflict, but what I'm having thoughts about are what do we do with those people who are those psychopathic criminals, like the serial rapists, the child molesters, the serial rapists, the child molesters, the murderers, the wife beaters, the absolute scum and low level humans.
So I do think that some things can either be rehabilitated, worked through, or helped. Do not ask me directly what those are. I honestly think that like somebody stealing, and maybe even to the point of somebody killing a person in self-defense or in a fight, or to put it like a technically violent person, I feel like some of those things can be worked through because normally what they did is like I'm trying to think like causation and, you know, like whatever, like that is a side effect of what happened.
Right.
It's not, you know, it's not like necessarily like a target. That's just where they felt like to put their energy in that point.
Right.
As far as the rapists and child molesters, they can all die. I know that that's not necessarily like what should happen, but yeah, I don't really know if somebody can be rehabilitated in that situation.
Do they deserve?
How do we do it?
I don't. And then it becomes a question of morality at that point.
It does.
Because I don't think child molesters or rapists deserve any sort of grace or room for rehabilitation.
Right.
So like that. So when this is what I'm struggling with. And it's not necessarily like a big deal that would make me want to discard prison abolition, but this is something that the scholars of prison abolition and the people who study and the what does it look like?
And I think that what we came up with that was just a secure care facility for that person to get as much intensive mental health care as humanly possible. And even through that, in some cases that won't work, but they are in a secure facility where somebody can watch them. It may not have to be like slave labor or anything like that, but they're being taken away from community to not harm community. And that is in and of itself is kind of a hard thing for prison abolitionists like myself, because you still have this almost like this institution that still is holding them hostage, but it's the human condition. Until we change the system that we function in to undo the human condition that we currently have, there's nothing else that we can do.
In the case of people that like are just doing harm and they don't want to change, or it's just like they're damaged to the point of turning back, I guess. Like depending on what they did, I guess some people have to be dealt with on a certain level. Like when
absolutely,
child predators or rapists and shit like that. I don't have a definitive answer for that. I'm not like for maintaining a structure that resembles prisons. Like you said, what is it?
It's a secure care facility. Yeah, it's just a fancy word for a small prison.
Yeah,
as
long as the whole format of that is something different. Like how you explained it, that sounds fine. Like I think the people who do shit like that don't make up a large majority.
They don't
make up a large number of people.
They don't.
And then I'm gonna like kind of not refute it, but argue with that point, because at least 75% of Black women are molested, assaulted, raped at some point in their life.
I think
it's like we can say it's a small percentage of men or women who are violent or sexually abusive towards children, or other men or other women, but like 75% of our population has been a victim of this. So
a bigger part of that is that we don't do our due diligence to be preventative, like proactive about preventing those things. Like we just passed a law recently of talking about consent when it comes to sexual education.
I was going to say that.
There's a lot of there are some men that really just don't fucking know, and I hate to be that guy, but like there are some men that just don't fucking know what that looks like.
I was going to say, I think that goes back into kind of what I said earlier about like what defines crime and what it means to be criminal.
Absolutely.
Because when we get into the conversation of consent, I feel like we've had this probably on this same podcast, but like, and this is totally not to give men out on this one.
Oh, not at all.
I can't believe I'm like even borderline defending, but I would have hoped that if consent was clearly defined and written like as a law of what exactly is consent and what is not consent, that maybe less men would not go against that.
Right.
If the thought was you get locked up in a healthcare facility for the rest of your life, I'm hoping this makes sense. Basically, it's like a lot of men will use the excuse or to say, now, I did not know that I did not have consent.
So
I did not know that she could not give consent in the age, when it comes to like ages and XYZ.
Right.
And so that's why a lot of them are willing to take the risk, because they do not believe technically that they can really be locked up for the things that they have done.
Right.
So when you put it into clearly defined words, absolute, whatever.
Right.
I would hope that more people, and I would hope that even the conversations that we are having now about Me Too and whatever, like when guys say now, like, oh, I'm afraid to even touch a woman, whatever, great, good for you, I'm glad you feel that way, keep that up. Like, you should be afraid. You should absolutely be afraid and in fear that you will be removed from society.
And lose some of that entitlement.
Yeah,
Right,
exactly.
absolutely.
Like, you will absolutely be removed from the community. We will take you out if you do not behave in this way as in regards to women, in regards to children, like whatever. So I agree in that aspect. I'm not necessarily sure how I feel about the small population. I think there's a small population.
I would just say it's bad. I wish you could just edit that out.
I get what you're saying.
No,
We
I
get what you're
understood.
saying, but we're saying like you can't say that it's a small population when so many of the women on the
Yeah.
opposite side have been affected by it.
Right.
There's a small amount of people that have been reported for it, and there's a small amount. There's an even smaller amount of people that have actually been convicted and locked up.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I think definitely that is probably when we talk about the conversation of rehabilitation or whatever. Again, it is clearly defining laws, clearly defining what is criminal behavior, which criminal behaviors can be rehabilitated, and in which ways they can be rehabilitated.
Right.
It's work. It's work, and it's work that nobody really wants to do. Yeah, I'm working on it. Niggas steal from me right now today. I don't know, like I might, until we get to abolition, I might want that nigga to go to jail right now today.
Right.
But I would like for him to go to maybe, not the prisons the way that they look like now. That would look a lot better than like, okay, well, here you go, you get 23 hours solitary for 7 years for like whatever, you get 1 meal of like piss a day or like whatever, like something that's not even humane. You get to work for the state where the state is making thousands of dollars off of you, but you get paid 25 cents or how much ever an hour to make license plates or whatever. Yeah, like you get slavery, and we pay you if we feel like it, because that is how it's written.
Right.
So that I'm not totally comfortable with. And I feel like that, again, especially is a conflict that, even taking black women out of it, black people, we deal with that a lot, because it's like I don't want to see my brother locked up, and I feel like my brother can get help. I just don't know in what ways I can actually help him.
Exactly.
That is the job of government. But when we have a government that wants to make money and not help, then this is what we are stuck with.
Right.
I mean, ultimately, I'm going to educate myself more on it. I'm not going to be like J. Cole. I'm not just going to think about it. I'm going to read about it. I'm going to read Angela Davis's "Our Prisons Obsolete."
Yeah.
I got the free PDF. I'm going to check that out. It's pretty short.
It's really great.
It's good.
Yes.
So I'm going to read that. I might do I might have some ideas about it, but that's definitely one of my next things that I'm going to look into. So, as I'm doing the work of learning of a different alternative to something that I'm used to and accustomed to and comfortable with. Like I said, I expressed what makes me uncomfortable about abolition, but in order to reach a point of being comfortable with it, I gotta open my imagination up to it and be open to different possibilities and different solutions.
People are uncomfortable with slavery, but you get over it.
Thank you guys for tuning into this episode about prison reformation. See you next time.